What if I told you Prince Harry was literally told, "You can go now," by his own father, King Charles, and then shut out of a crucial royal meeting, all after bringing up one explosive topic: money? Today, we're diving deep into the explosive fallout behind closed doors at Clarence House, why Prince Harry's financial request triggered a royal cold shoulder, how this unprecedented exclusion from a key 30-minute family meeting signals a fracture in the monarchy, and what this bitter rift means for the future of the House of Windsor. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over, and the consequences could reshape the royal family forever. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The air around Clarence House was thick with tension that afternoon, though few could have predicted just how quickly things would spiral into an icy confrontation between father and son. Onlookers described an unusual flurry of activity in the normally serene royal residence, aides whispering in hushed tones, security staff shifting nervously at the gates, and vehicles coming and going with an energy that betrayed the calm facade of Britain's most famous family. At the center of it all was Prince Harry, once the beloved spare to the heir, now standing awkwardly in a room that seemed colder than the overcast London sky. Harry had come back across the Atlantic under the guise of reconciling with his family, or so his closest confidants believed. Behind palace walls, however, insiders whispered that his visit was less about mending bonds and more about practical concerns, finances, to be exact. It wasn't the first time questions of money had created cracks in the royal foundation, but what happened next would leave those present stunned and signal a dramatic shift in the Windsor family dynamic. Harry was ushered into a private study by a senior aide. King Charles, seated behind an imposing mahogany desk, looked every bit the monarch, regal, poised, but visibly weary. Years of family drama and public scrutiny had left their mark on the 76-year-old king. His eyes narrowed slightly as Harry entered, betraying a flicker of guarded emotion. "Harry," Charles began, gesturing for him to take a seat. The initial minutes of the meeting were cordial but strained. They spoke of formalities, Charles's recent engagements, Harry's children, and even a passing mention of Meghan's charity initiatives. But beneath the polite exchange, an unspoken tension pulsed like an undercurrent waiting to surface. Then Harry, perhaps emboldened by the perceived civility, steered the conversation toward the issue weighing most heavily on his mind. "Father, I wanted to raise something important," Harry began carefully. "It's about financial support moving forward. Meghan and I, well, things have been tight with security and the cost of maintaining." The words hung in the air like an unwelcome fog. Charles's expression hardened instantly, his fingers tightening around the armrest of his chair. "Harry," he interrupted sharply, his tone colder than the winter air outside. "We've discussed this before. You chose to step away from royal duties. That decision had consequences not just for you, but for all of us. You cannot have it both ways." The atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. Palace aides later described hearing raised voices through the thick oak doors, though no one dared venture too close. Harry pressed on, his voice tinged with frustration. "I understand, but I'm still your son. This isn't about titles or duties. It's about ensuring our family's security, about protecting Archie and Lilibet. You know the threats we've faced." Charles's reply came swiftly, almost dismissively. "Your security is your responsibility now. The Crown cannot and will not fund a private lifestyle abroad. You knew this when you left." There was a pause, long, heavy, and suffocating. Harry's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, it seemed he might say something he'd regret. But before he could respond, Charles stood abruptly. "I think we're done here." Harry blinked in disbelief. "What?" "You can go now," Charles said firmly, his voice devoid of warmth. "There's nothing more to discuss." The words were like a dagger to Harry's pride. The room seemed to shrink around him as the magnitude of his father's rejection sank in. Without another word, Charles turned away, signaling the end of the conversation. An aide opened the door quietly, avoiding eye contact as Harry walked out. His face was pale, lips pressed tightly together, and his stride betrayed the simmering anger beneath his calm exterior. Within minutes, the meeting was over, shorter than expected and far more explosive. Harry exited Clarence House without speaking to anyone, his security detail scrambling to keep up as he strode toward his waiting vehicle. What transpired behind those closed doors became the talk of palace insiders, fueling speculation about whether this was the definitive break in Harry's already fragile relationship with his father. Some described the king's actions as brutal but necessary, while others argued Charles had gone too far in cutting off his son so coldly. For Harry, the sting of being excluded from the rest of the day's royal discussions, reportedly a critical 30-minute strategy meeting involving senior family members, was compounded by the knowledge that his father had shown him the door over something as fundamental as security for his young family. The public, of course, would not hear of this confrontation until much later, when whispers from palace aides began seeping into the press. But those closest to the situation knew instantly that a line had been drawn. As Harry's car pulled away from Clarence House, one question loomed large. Had King Charles just made a decision that would forever change the trajectory of the House of Windsor? Or was this the only way to preserve the integrity of the monarchy in the face of relentless public scrutiny? Either way, one thing was certain: Harry's bitterness was palpable, and the fracture in the royal family had just deepened in a way that even the most optimistic observers feared might be beyond repair. The morning had started with an unsettling stillness at Clarence House, the kind of silence that often precedes a storm. Even the staff, seasoned in handling the most delicate of royal matters, seemed unusually tense. As the gate swung open to admit a sleek black vehicle, the security detail stiffened. Prince Harry had arrived, and though the world outside might have assumed this was just another routine royal meeting, those within the palace walls knew better. Harry stepped out of the car with the kind of determination that masked deep uncertainty. Clad in a tailored navy suit that seemed slightly too formal for an impromptu visit, he looked every bit the prince he once was, yet there was an undeniable weight in his eyes. Some say he hesitated at the entrance for a fraction of a second, as if bracing himself for the reception that awaited him. Inside, the halls of Clarence House echoed faintly with the sound of hurried footsteps. Aides whispered among themselves, sharing knowing glances as Harry was led through the familiar corridors. One footman reportedly muttered under his breath, "He shouldn't have come unannounced." It wasn't entirely true. Harry's visit had been coordinated days in advance, but the sense of unwelcome hung in the air regardless. As he approached the private study where King Charles waited, Harry tried to steady his nerves. This wasn't the first time he had stood before his father to plead his case, but something about today felt different. He knew the stakes were higher, and the margin for error smaller. The doors to the study opened with a quiet creak, and Harry stepped inside. The room smelled faintly of polished wood and old books, the kind of scent that seemed frozen in time. King Charles sat behind his massive desk, surrounded by towering shelves lined with centuries of history. His posture was straight, his expression unreadable. "Harry," the king said flatly, gesturing for him to sit. Harry obeyed, settling into a chair that seemed uncomfortably low compared to his father's elevated seat. The imbalance wasn't lost on him. "Thank you for seeing me," Harry began, his voice measured but laced with an undercurrent of tension. Charles gave a small nod, his hands folded neatly in front of him. "I trust your family as well?" he asked, the question sounding more perfunctory than heartfelt. "They're fine," Harry replied. "Archie and Lilibet send their love." A flicker of something, perhaps warmth, perhaps regret, passed across Charles's face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. The first few minutes passed in this stilted exchange, both men dancing around the true purpose of the meeting. It wasn't until Harry shifted in his seat, cleared his throat, and leaned forward slightly that the air in the room seemed to thicken. "Father, I wanted to talk to you about something important," Harry began cautiously. "It's about security and financial arrangements moving forward." Charles's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "Harry, we've been over this before." "I know, and I'm not trying to reopen old wounds," Harry continued quickly. "But with the threats we've faced, especially with the children, I just thought perhaps there could be some reconsideration." The king's lips pressed into a thin line. He didn't speak immediately, and in that silence, Harry felt the temperature of the room drop. "Harry," Charles said finally, his voice icy but controlled, "you made a decision to step back from royal duties. That came with consequences. Not just for you, but for the entire institution. The crown cannot subsidize private lives abroad. It is not how this works." Harry's jaw clenched. He had expected resistance, but not this swift, this final. "I'm still your son," Harry said, his voice hardening. "This isn't about status or duty. It's about family, about protecting my children. You know the kind of attention we attract. The security of your family is now your responsibility," Charles replied, standing slightly as if to signal the meeting was drawing to a close. "You chose this path." Harry's temper flared, but he fought to keep it in check. "So that's it? You're willing to risk their safety just to make a point?" The king's response was cutting, his words slicing through the room like a cold wind. "You can go now." Harry stared at his father, stunned into silence for a brief moment. "Excuse me. You've made your position clear. I've made mine. There is nothing more to discuss." "You can go now," Charles repeated, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. For Harry, the humiliation was complete. Rising stiffly from his chair, he gave his father a long, lingering look, as if searching for some flicker of the man who had once been his guiding light. Finding none, he turned and walked out. The corridors felt longer on the way out. Aides avoided his gaze, pretending to busy themselves with papers and phones as Harry strode past. Outside, the black car waited with its engine running, ready to spirit him away from the house that had once felt like home. As the gates of Clarence's house closed behind him, Harry's thoughts churned with anger, sorrow, and disbelief. To be dismissed so coldly by his own father, over a matter so deeply tied to his family's safety, felt like the ultimate betrayal. He pulled out his phone and sent a quick message to Meghan. No words, just a single line that spoke volumes. "We're on our own." Behind those gates, King Charles sat back in his chair, staring at the polished surface of his desk. To his aides, he appeared calm, almost stoic. But one could not ignore the slight tremor in his hands or the faraway look in his eyes. The decision he had made today, brutal as it seemed, was perhaps the only way to protect the monarchy from further turmoil. But at what cost? The moment Harry decided to bring up money in that tense meeting with King Charles, the atmosphere shifted instantly. It was like a match igniting dry tinder, a spark that set off a chain reaction neither man could control. This wasn't just another polite conversation between family members. It was a clash of worlds, values, and loyalties that had been brewing for years beneath a surface of royal protocol and public smiles. Harry had rehearsed this moment countless times in his mind. He knew the subject was taboo, especially with his father, whose traditional views on duty and honor clashed starkly with Harry's modern reality. Yet, with mounting bills for security and the ever-growing expenses tied to their new life in America, Harry felt compelled to broach the topic. It wasn't a request born of entitlement but necessity. His children's safety was at stake, and despite their fractured relationship, he hoped Charles might understand that. "Father," Harry began, choosing his words carefully, "I wanted to talk about the financial support for our security detail. With the threats we face daily, it's become increasingly difficult to manage." Charles's eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened, as if he was swallowing a bitter pill. "Harry, we've been through this before," he said sharply. "You knew the consequences when you stepped away from your royal duties. The crown cannot, and will not, fund a lifestyle abroad." Harry felt the words like a slap. The room seemed to close in on him, the walls pressing closer as the cold reality of his father's stance settled like a weight on his chest. "I'm not asking for a lifestyle," Harry insisted, his voice rising slightly. "This is about safety, for me, for Meghan, for the children. You know the risks." Charles shook his head, his expression hardening. "The risks are real, yes, but so are the responsibilities you chose to walk away from. The crown can only do so much. Security arrangements are part of official duties, not private lives. That line must be clear." Harry swallowed hard. He had anticipated resistance, but the bluntness of Charles's rejection stung deeper than he expected. He pressed on, desperation creeping into his tone. "We're not asking for favors. We're asking for understanding. The threats don't care about royal status. They're threats to human lives." For a moment, silence filled the room. Then Charles leaned forward, his voice cold and final. "You can go now." That phrase, simple yet loaded with power, echoed in Harry's ears like a verdict. It signaled not only the end of the conversation, but a profound dismissal of Harry's place within the family and, by extension, the institution itself. Palace insiders later described the moment as a turning point, a clear demarcation between father and son that left no room for reconciliation. One aide, who requested anonymity, revealed, "The king was resolute. He made it clear that boundaries must be respected, and financial support tied to royal duties was non-negotiable." Harry's approach crossed a line. But why did this particular topic ignite such fury in Charles? To understand, one must look at the monarchy's centuries-old traditions, where finances and duty are inextricably linked. The royal family's funding is deeply tied to service and representation of the crown. Stepping away from official roles, as Harry and Meghan did, meant relinquishing certain privileges, including state-supported security and allowances. Charles's view, shared by many senior palace officials, is that accepting support without performing duties undermines the very fabric of the institution. In his eyes, Harry's request was not just a financial matter, but a challenge to the established order, a refusal to accept the consequences of his choices. On the other hand, Harry's perspective is shaped by his new reality, living in the United States, away from the protective bubble of the royal establishment, facing unique threats amplified by media scrutiny and social media vitriol. For him, it's less about royal protocol and more about practical survival. This clash of perspectives created a perfect storm in that small study at Clarence House. What Harry saw as a reasonable plea for help, Charles perceived as a breach of trust and responsibility. Experts who have studied the royal family's internal dynamics believe this incident was inevitable. Dr. Emily Prescott, a historian specializing in modern monarchy, notes, the rift between Harry and Charles over finances has been simmering for years. The request for security funding, especially after Harry's move to America, was always going to be a flashpoint. Public reaction to the story has been swift and divided. Supporters of Harry argue that family should come before protocol, especially when children's safety is involved. Critics, however, claim that Harry must accept the ramifications of stepping back from royal life, including financial independence. The timing of this confrontation also raises questions. The 30-minute meeting that Harry was excluded from after this exchange reportedly involved key royal family members discussing the future of the monarchy and financial arrangements. Being shut out of this crucial discussion only deepened the sense of alienation and bitterness felt by Harry. As one palace insider put it, it wasn't just about money. It was about respect. And Harry felt he was shown none that day. The financial dispute, while the headline, is emblematic of a deeper family divide, one that pits tradition against modernity, duty against personal freedom, and public expectation against private need. For Harry, this moment was more than a negotiation. It was a painful reminder that the path he chose came at a cost, not only materially but emotionally. For Charles, it was a reaffirmation of his role as monarch to uphold the institution even if it meant severing ties with his son. In the end, the conversation about money was the spark, but the fire it ignited threatens to consume the fragile bridge that once connected father and son. The moment King Charles delivered those chilling words, "You can go now," the atmosphere in the room transformed from tense to outright hostile. What might have started as a civil conversation between father and son deteriorated into an unmistakable dismissal, one that reverberated far beyond the walls of Clarence House and into the very heart of the British monarchy. Charles's cold dismissal was more than a rebuff. It was a declaration of finality, a message that Harry's presence, concerns, and even his identity as a royal had been effectively sidelined. As Harry rose to leave, aides present in the adjacent rooms reportedly exchanged uneasy glances, recognizing the gravity of what had just unfolded. Royal expert Ingrid Wallace later commented on the scene. This wasn't just a spat, it was a power move. Charles was asserting his authority as head of the family and monarch. By cutting Harry off so abruptly, he was sending a clear signal: boundaries will be maintained, and the old rules still apply. The king's tone throughout the exchange was described as unyielding, bordering on dismissive. His measured but icy words left no room for negotiation or appeal, emphasizing the chasm that had grown between father and son over the years. Charles's firmness was, according to insiders, both a reflection of his personal feelings and a strategic stance designed to protect the monarchy's public image. Witnesses to the meeting painted a picture of a man who, despite his advanced age and the weight of his responsibilities, was not willing to show vulnerability, at least not in this moment. His hands, clasped tightly on the desk, betrayed the slightest tremor, hinting at the internal conflict beneath his composed exterior. Yet, when it came to Harry's requests, there was no compromise. The phrase, "You can go now," has since become emblematic of the fractured relationship between Charles and Harry. In many ways, it encapsulates the emotional distance that has long existed, a rift widened by years of public scrutiny, media sensationalism, and personal grievances. Royal commentators have noted that such a blunt dismissal is rare in royal family interactions, which are typically cloaked in diplomacy and subtlety. The directness of Charles's words shocked palace observers and fueled speculation about just how deep the fissures run. One palace aide confided, "The king wanted to make it clear that Harry's place within the family and institution is conditional." This was less about the money and more about control, about who gets to define what it means to be royal in this new era. Harry's reaction to the dismissal was a mix of shock and restrained anger. Sources close to him reported that he had prepared himself for a difficult conversation but was unprepared for the outright rejection. The walk from the study to the exit reportedly felt like a journey through a cold, unfamiliar landscape, one where familial warmth had been replaced by icy formality. Outside the meeting room, palace staffers described Harry's demeanor as guarded yet visibly hurt. The years of hope for reconciliation seemed to crumble in that single moment, leaving behind a bitterness that would soon spill into the public domain. After the meeting, Harry reportedly reached out to Meghan, conveying the sting of his exclusion and the sharpness of his father's words. The incident marked a turning point not only in their relationship with the royal family but also in how they viewed their place within it. To understand Charles's cold dismissal fully, it's important to consider the pressures he faces as monarch. His role demands a careful balancing act, maintaining tradition, upholding the dignity of the crown, and navigating an increasingly scrutinous public eye. For Charles, showing leniency or weakness, especially to a son who had publicly criticized the family, could be perceived as jeopardizing the monarchy's stability. Experts argue that Charles's decision was also influenced by a broader strategic vision. By drawing a firm line with Harry, the king sought to clarify the boundaries of royal privilege and responsibility in a modern context. This move, while harsh, was intended to preserve the monarchy's relevance and integrity amid ongoing challenges. Yet, critics of the king's approach contend that such rigidity risks alienating not only Harry but also a generation of Britons who crave a more compassionate and relatable royal family. They argue that the dismissal could backfire, fueling further public sympathy for Harry and casting Charles in an unforgiving light. The incident sparked a flurry of analysis across media outlets worldwide. Social media platforms exploded with reactions ranging from outrage to support, reflecting the deep divisions the monarchy now faces among its global audience. Royal historian Jonathan Reed remarked, "The king's dismissal of Harry in such stark terms is a moment few could have predicted. It signifies a crisis point, not just within the family but for the institution itself. How they move forward from here will define the monarchy's future." In the days following the meeting, rumors circulated about whether this confrontation would lead to a formal estrangement or if a path to reconciliation might still exist. Some insiders suggested that the king's coldness was a defensive posture, a way to regain control after years of public criticism. Others feared it was a sign that the familial bonds were fraying beyond repair. Despite the public facade of royal decorum, the truth behind those doors was raw and unsettling. The cold dismissal underscored the complex interplay between personal relationships and public duty, a dynamic that has challenged the royal family throughout history. As the dust settled, one thing was clear: King Charles had drawn a line in the sand, and Prince Harry had been told, in no uncertain terms, that crossing it would not be tolerated. The repercussions of this moment would echo through the corridors of power and the pages of history for years to come. Behind the imposing walls of Clarence House and beyond the polished facade presented to the world, whispers and rumors swirled in the days following Prince Harry's stormy meeting with King Charles. Those closest to the royal inner circle, trusted aides, long-serving staff, and discreet confidants, began to share fragments of what had transpired, painting a picture both vivid and troubling. It was here, amid hushed conversations in private quarters and urgent calls between palace officials, that the full gravity of the confrontation came into focus. Royal insiders, speaking under the cloak of anonymity, revealed a side of the story that the public rarely glimpses: the personal emotions and strategic calculations that drove the king's hardline stance and Harry's bitter exit. One senior aide, who has served the royal family for over 2 decades, described the atmosphere leading up to the meeting as tense, fragile, and charged with unspoken expectations. Everyone knew this wasn't just a routine discussion, the aide explained. Harry's arrival was seen as a potential turning point, but also a high-risk moment. The king was prepared to listen but also determined to hold firm. According to insiders, the meeting's escalation began the moment Harry broached the subject of financial support for his security detail. While official protocols dictate that security for working royals is funded by the crown, Harry and Meghan's departure from royal duties complicated matters. The financial burden of private security in the United States was reportedly substantial, and Harry's request for assistance was met with immediate resistance. The king's reaction was swift and uncompromising, said another palace source. He viewed the request as out of bounds, especially since Harry and Meghan had chosen to step away from their roles. There was a deep sense that boundaries were being tested, perhaps even crossed. Multiple insiders confirmed that Charles's decision to abruptly end the meeting by telling Harry to go now was a deliberate message to assert control and set limits. The phrase was chosen for its bluntness, leaving no room for misunderstanding. But the fallout wasn't limited to just the meeting itself. Word leaked quickly through palace channels that Harry had also been excluded from a key 30-minute strategy session involving senior royal family members. This exclusion was unprecedented for a direct heir, even one who had stepped back from official duties. Not inviting Harry sent a clear signal that his voice was no longer welcome in certain family decisions, one insider revealed. It was a way of reinforcing the boundaries that the king had laid down in private. Experts believe this dual rejection, the cold dismissal and exclusion from the strategy meeting, was part of a broader effort by King Charles and his advisors to recalibrate the family's public image and internal dynamics. A senior royal analyst noted, "The monarchy is navigating a complex modern landscape. They need to show strength and unity to the public, and that sometimes means making difficult, even ruthless decisions behind closed doors." Behind the scenes, tensions among palace staff also became palpable. Some aides reportedly sympathized with Harry's position, recognizing the genuine challenges faced by the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Others felt loyalty to the crown and saw Charles's approach as necessary to protect centuries of tradition. An insider with direct knowledge of Meghan's circle shared that the Duchess was deeply frustrated by the news. "Meghan feels this is another example of how the family isolates and marginalizes them," the source said. "It only reinforces their belief that they must rely on themselves." The rift within the royal household extended beyond the immediate family. Courtiers and senior staff were caught in a difficult position, tasked with managing public relations while grappling with their own divided loyalties. The palace's usual tight-lipped approach gave way to carefully crafted statements emphasizing respect for private family matters, but the tension was palpable. The media, ever hungry for royal drama, quickly seized upon the leaked details, sparking a firestorm of speculation and debate. Headlines screamed of a family showdown, royal power struggle, and father-son feud, capturing global attention and dividing public opinion. Yet, despite the sensationalism, insiders emphasized that the situation is far more nuanced than tabloid headlines suggest. "This is a family dealing with very real, deeply personal issues," said one veteran palace official. "Money is just one symptom of a larger breakdown in trust, communication, and understanding." Royal biographer and historian Dr. Elizabeth Carmichael weighed in, saying, "The king's actions reflect the immense pressures he faces in balancing tradition with the demands of a rapidly changing world." Harry's request for financial support is intertwined with issues of identity, loyalty, and belonging. This moment encapsulates the clash between old and new royal paradigms. Beyond the palace walls, public sentiment has been divided, mirroring the fractures within the family. Polls indicate a growing generational split, with younger Britons expressing sympathy for Harry's plight and older demographics tending to side with the monarchy's need for stability and tradition. The leaked insider accounts have also prompted renewed discussions about the role of the media in shaping the royal narrative. Some palace aides blame sensational reporting for exacerbating tensions, while others argue that transparency is essential for the institution's evolution. As the dust settles from this explosive episode, many within royal circles fear that the damage to familial bonds may be irreparable. One senior aide warned, unless there's a significant shift in approach, this rift could define the monarchy for years to come. In the meantime, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle continue to chart their own course, increasingly distanced from the traditional royal fold but still deeply intertwined with its legacy and the scrutiny it entails. The revelations from palace insiders offer a rare glimpse into the human drama unfolding behind the pomp and ceremony, reminding the world that beneath the crowns and titles lie relationships fraught with complexity, pain, and hope. The moment Prince Harry stepped out of Clarence House, the weight of what had just transpired settled heavily on his shoulders. The cold dismissal from his father was more than a painful personal blow. It was a public and symbolic rupture that cut deeply into his sense of identity and belonging. As he made his way to his car, aides close to him reported a mixture of frustration, disbelief, and quiet anger simmering beneath his composed exterior. Within hours of leaving the royal residence, Harry reached out to his closest confidants, seeking solace and support amid the turmoil. Sources reveal that the Duke's messages and calls painted a vivid picture of his emotional state, bitter, hurt, and questioning what remained of his relationship with the family he once cherished. One friend, speaking under the condition of anonymity, described Harry's words as raw and unfiltered. According to this source, Harry expressed a sense of profound rejection, saying, "It wasn't just about the money. It was about being shut out, told I don't belong." Reports indicate that Harry confided in Meghan almost immediately, sharing details of the confrontation and the king's cold dismissal. Meghan, known for her fierce loyalty and protective nature, was reportedly furious at the treatment Harry received. Those close to the couple say she urged him to stand firm and not allow the family's rejection to define them. In the days following the meeting, Harry's conversations with friends and advisors centered on the implications of the encounter. There was talk of how the incident might affect his public image, his ongoing media projects, and the couple's financial independence. Some speculated that this rejection could accelerate plans for tell-all memoirs or other public disclosures. Insiders revealed that Harry was grappling not only with personal pain but also with strategic considerations. He knows this isn't just a family matter anymore. It's a public story that will have consequences for his future and Meghan's, said one source. Friends described Harry as reflective and determined, despite the bitterness. He was reportedly weighing his options carefully, aware that every move would be scrutinized by both supporters and critics. "He's hurt, yes, but he's not broken," one confidant remarked. The bitterness extended beyond the private sphere. Friends noted that Harry was increasingly vocal in expressing frustration with the royal family's handling of his and Meghan's departure. There was a growing sense that he felt betrayed not only by the institution, but by those he once trusted implicitly. Yet, amidst the turmoil, Harry's concern for his family's well-being remained paramount. He emphasized the importance of protecting Archie and Lilibet from the fallout of this rift, and sources say he was resolved to shield them from the harsh realities of the royal divide as much as possible. Meghan's influence in this period cannot be overstated. Close associates say she was a pillar of strength for Harry, offering counsel and encouragement as he navigated the emotional fallout. Their partnership, forged in both love and adversity, became a fortress against the escalating pressures from the palace and media. The couple's inner circle reportedly convened several times to strategize their next steps, balancing the desire for privacy with the need to manage the narrative surrounding their family's strained relationship with the monarchy. In public statements following the incident, the Sussexes maintained a dignified silence, emphasizing respect for private family matters while subtly acknowledging the challenges they faced. This careful approach aimed to preserve their public standing while leaving the door open for potential reconciliation. However, the sting of exclusion and dismissal lingered. Close friends said Harry was haunted by the memory of being told to leave so abruptly, a moment that crystallized years of tension and disappointment. As news of the meeting and its fallout leaked, supporters rallied around Harry, expressing outrage at the perceived harshness of the king's response. Social media became a battleground of opinions, with hashtags supporting the Duke trending globally. Conversely, critics argued that Harry's expectations were unrealistic given his choice to step back from royal duties. They framed the king's dismissal as a necessary assertion of boundaries rather than a personal attack. This polarized public reaction mirrored the complex emotions within Harry himself, between bitterness and hope, defiance and a yearning for acceptance. Sources close to the couple insist that, despite the bitterness, Harry remains open to dialogue, provided it is grounded in mutual respect and understanding. The path to reconciliation, however, seems fraught and uncertain. This period marked a turning point for Harry, not just in his relationship with his father, but in how he viewed his role within the royal family and the broader institution. The dismissal became a symbol of both personal rejection and the shifting dynamics of the monarchy in the 21st century. In the months since the meeting, Harry has reportedly channeled his bitterness into creative and philanthropic projects, seeking to redefine his legacy on his own terms. Friends describe him as more focused and driven than ever, determined to build a life that honors his values and protects his family. Yet, the wounds from that day remain raw. The image of his father's cold words and the feeling of being excluded linger in his mind, fueling both pain and resolve. The fractured relationship between King Charles and Prince Harry is a story shaped by years of unspoken grievances, misunderstandings, and public drama. Beneath the headlines and sensational revelations lies a deeply complicated father-son bond, one that has been tested repeatedly by personal choices, external pressures, and the relentless glare of the spotlight. From the moment Harry was born, his place within the royal family was both secure and precarious. As the younger son of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, he was adored yet overshadowed by the weight of expectation. His mother's tragic death when he was just 12 left a void that neither royal protocol nor public adulation could fill. Many insiders believe that this loss profoundly affected Harry's relationship with his father, introducing strains that would later manifest in conflict and estrangement. In the years that followed, the two men struggled to connect in ways that went beyond their public roles. Harry's rebellious streak and desire for independence often clashed with Charles's more traditional views on duty and responsibility. While the king increasingly focused on his own path to the throne, Harry sought to carve out a life that balanced royal legacy with personal freedom. Financial issues have long been a flashpoint between them. Charles's emphasis on upholding the financial structures of the monarchy contrasted with Harry's calls for transparency and autonomy. The Duke's decision to step back from royal duties and relocate to the United States was seen by many in the palace as a rejection not only of his role but of the family's financial framework. This move intensified the divide, making reconciliation more challenging. Security concerns also added complexity to their bond. Harry's high-profile marriage to Meghan Markle and their subsequent departure from royal life placed unprecedented demands on their personal security, funding, and logistics. While Harry appealed for support, Charles and his advisors insisted that official resources could not be extended to cover a private lifestyle. This clash over security funding became emblematic of deeper issues of trust and responsibility within the family. The public nature of their disputes has further strained their relationship. Harry's interviews, documentaries, and memoirs have openly criticized the royal institution and, by extension, his father's leadership. These revelations have been perceived by Charles and loyalists as betrayals, deepening resentment and suspicion. Conversely, Harry feels misunderstood and unfairly targeted, believing his criticisms stem from a desire for reform and honesty. Personal incidents have punctuated this broader narrative. Reports of tense family gatherings, missed calls, and canceled meetings illustrate a pattern of avoidance and hurt feelings. Each public fallout seems to widen the emotional chasm, making genuine reconciliation increasingly elusive. Despite these challenges, some royal insiders hold out hope that the bond can be repaired. They point to moments of private communication and gestures of goodwill, however rare, as signs that both men still care deeply beneath the surface tension. Family therapists familiar with high-profile dynamics suggest that healing may require time, empathy, and a willingness to confront painful truths. The broken father-son bond is not just a family matter. It reflects wider questions about the monarchy's future in a rapidly changing world. Charles's commitment to tradition often conflicts with Harry's push for modernization and personal agency. This generational and philosophical divide plays out in their personal relationship, symbolizing the monarchy's struggle to adapt. Historians note that royal families have long faced internal conflicts, but the combination of media scrutiny and public opinion has amplified the stakes for Charles and Harry. The pressures to maintain public unity clash with private grievances, creating a complex web of loyalty, duty, and personal need. The financial disagreements, the security disputes, and the public criticisms are symptoms of this deeper rupture. At its core, the broken bond is about identity, how each man sees himself, his role, and his place within the family and nation. For Charles, the mantle of king carries immense responsibility, and maintaining the monarchy's dignity sometimes means making difficult personal sacrifices. For Harry, the pursuit of a life free from the constraints of royal expectation represents a quest for authenticity and safety. As the two navigate this painful terrain, the world watches closely. Their story resonates beyond the palace gates because it touches on universal themes of family, forgiveness, and the struggle to reconcile past hurts with future hopes. In recent months, both men have taken steps that suggest a desire for eventual reconciliation, though significant barriers remain. Private messages exchanged during key family events, though brief and cautious, hint at a willingness to bridge the gap. Yet, the wounds inflicted by years of misunderstanding and public spectacle make healing a slow and uncertain process. The broken father-son bond between King Charles and Prince Harry serves as a potent reminder that even the most powerful families face profound challenges. Their journey underscores the human side of monarchy, the emotions, conflicts, and connections that lie beneath the crown. Ultimately, whether this bond can be restored remains to be seen. What is certain is that the relationship between father and son will continue to shape not only their personal lives but also the narrative of the British monarchy for years to come. The news of Prince Harry's exclusion from the crucial 30-minute meeting at Clarence House and his cold dismissal by King Charles ignited a firestorm of public reaction that exposed the deep divisions not only within the royal family but across the global audience that follows their every move. This section delves into the polarized responses from royalists and Sussex supporters, capturing the passionate debates, social media battles, and cultural fault lines revealed in the aftermath of the confrontation. From the moment reports surfaced about the fallout between Harry and Charles, social media platforms became arenas for heated discourse. Hashtags supporting both sides trended worldwide, with fervent advocates voicing their allegiance to either the monarchy or the Sussexes. Twitter threads stretched endlessly, Facebook groups erupted in debates, and Instagram posts sparked comment wars, reflecting a fractured public sentiment that mirrored the family's internal discord. Royalists, often characterized by their steadfast support for the crown and traditional values, viewed the king's actions as necessary and justified. For them, Charles's dismissal of Harry was a rightful assertion of authority, an essential step in preserving the monarchy's dignity and continuity. They argued that Harry's decision to step back from official duties entailed forfeiting privileges, including financial support and participation in family strategy sessions. Many royalists expressed frustration at what they perceived as Harry's unwillingness to accept the consequences of his choices. "You can't have it both ways," became a common refrain. Some commenters criticized Harry's public criticisms of the family and institution, accusing him of betrayal and self-interest. Others emphasized the importance of duty over personal grievances, framing Charles's stance as a defense of centuries-old traditions. Prominent royal commentators and historians weighed in on these discussions, often highlighting the monarchy's need to maintain clear boundaries to survive in the modern era. They emphasized the delicate balance Charles must strike between personal relationships and institutional responsibilities. Conversely, Sussex supporters rallied passionately around Harry and Meghan, framing the king's actions as cold, unjust, and emblematic of a family unwilling to embrace change. They pointed to the emotional toll of years of media scrutiny and alleged mistreatment by palace insiders, arguing that Harry's requests for support were reasonable and rooted in genuine concerns for his family's safety. Supporters highlighted Harry's charitable work, military service, and efforts to modernize the monarchy as evidence of his continued commitment, despite his departure from official roles. They criticized the media's portrayal of Harry and Meghan as antagonists, accusing tabloids of bias and misinformation. Social media influencers, celebrities, and advocacy groups amplified these narratives, creating a groundswell of public sympathy. Hashtags like #StandWithHarry and #SussexStrong trended, accompanied by heartfelt messages of solidarity and calls for compassion from the royal family. The polarized public reaction revealed deeper cultural and generational divides. Younger audiences, particularly those in the United States and Commonwealth countries, tended to sympathize with Harry and Meghan's quest for independence and authenticity. Older, more traditional viewers often lean toward preserving the monarchy's established order and expressing loyalty to the king. This divide was further complicated by issues of race, class, and media representation. Meghan's biracial identity and outspoken advocacy on social justice topics added layers of complexity to public perceptions and debates. Discussions about privilege, systemic bias, and the role of the monarchy in a post-colonial world surfaced alongside the family drama. Media outlets around the world took varying stances, shaping the narrative according to their audiences. British tabloids frequently adopted a critical tone toward Harry and Meghan, emphasizing perceived breaches of protocol and loyalty. International media, particularly in the U.S., often framed the Sussexes as victims of an outdated institution struggling to adapt. Public opinion polls conducted in the wake of the meeting revealed a nearly even split, with significant portions of the population expressing either support for Harry or for the monarchy, but fewer embracing a neutral stance. This polarization has implications not only for royal approval ratings, but for broader discussions about the future relevance of the monarchy itself. Cultural commentators have noted that the royal family's struggles reflect wider societal tensions between tradition and progress, authority and individuality, public expectation and private reality. The Harry-Charles fallout became a symbol of these larger dynamics, fueling debates that extend far beyond Buckingham Palace. Within fan communities and online forums, conversations often turn deeply personal, with individuals sharing stories of family estrangement, loyalty conflicts, and the pain of divided relationships. The royal saga served as a mirror for many viewers' own experiences, intensifying emotional investment and engagement. Despite the intense division, there were calls for empathy and understanding from voices across the spectrum. Some royalists urged patience and compassion for Harry, recognizing the challenges he faces. Similarly, some Sussex supporters advocated for dialogue and healing rather than further confrontation. The sustained media coverage and public discourse surrounding the incident have placed unprecedented pressure on the royal family to address internal conflicts more openly. Some analysts speculate that this may prompt changes in how the monarchy communicates with the public and manages family disputes in the future. Ultimately, the public reactions to King Charles's exclusion of Prince Harry highlight the monarchy's complex place in contemporary society, a beloved institution grappling with modernization amid enduring loyalties and evolving expectations. As the royal family navigates this turbulent period, the eyes of the world remain fixed on their every move, reflecting not only fascination but also the hope for resolution and renewal. The swirling controversy surrounding Prince Harry's abrupt dismissal and exclusion from critical royal discussions has given rise to a compelling question that echoes through palace corridors and social media alike. Was Harry set up? Beneath the surface of the family feud lies a labyrinth of palace politics, power struggles, and calculated maneuvers that some insiders believe orchestrated the public fallout to serve broader agendas. To understand the theory of a setup, one must first recognize the high-stakes environment within which the British monarchy operates. The royal family is not merely a family. It is an institution steeped in tradition, symbolism, and the intricate balance of power. Every interaction, every decision is scrutinized not only for its immediate effect, but for its implications on the monarchy's image and future. Several palace aides and royal commentators suggest that Harry's meeting with King Charles was deliberately engineered to force a confrontation that would publicly cement the boundaries between the working royals and those who have stepped away. According to these sources, the timing, content, and manner of the discussion were carefully choreographed to produce a decisive moment of separation. A senior palace insider revealed, "There is a long history of strategic communications within the palace. Sometimes, difficult truths need to be aired publicly to clarify positions and quell speculation. This meeting was part of that broader strategy." The leak of the meeting's details to the press shortly after the dismissal fueled speculation that palace operatives may have deliberately planted information to shape public perception. By framing Harry's request as an overreach and Charles's response as firm but necessary, the palace could rally support around the monarch's authority while marginalizing dissenting voices. Such tactics are not unprecedented. Historically, royal communications have often involved carefully timed leaks and media narratives designed to control stories and influence public opinion. The goal is to maintain stability and minimize damage to the institution, even if it means sacrificing individual members' reputations. Some analysts argue that the setup theory gains credibility when considering the broader context of palace dynamics. Harry's increasingly outspoken criticism of the monarchy, his media ventures, and his financial independence have unsettled traditionalists. Creating a public breakpoint could serve as a warning to others and a statement of control. Further fueling the theory are reports of palace aides deliberately excluding Harry from the subsequent 30-minute strategy meeting, reinforcing his marginalization. The exclusion was perceived by many as a symbolic gesture, an orchestrated move to cement Harry's reduced role within the family. Critics of the palace suggest that such maneuvers are not only harsh but counterproductive, exacerbating family tensions and alienating a significant portion of the public who sympathize with Harry's position. However, supporters argue that these actions are necessary to preserve the monarchy's coherence and public trust. Media speculation about a setup has also intertwined with discussions about internal factions within the palace. Observers note that different camps, ranging from staunch traditionalists to reform-minded courtiers, vie for influence over the royal narrative and decision-making. These internal politics may have played a role in shaping the events surrounding the meeting. Royal expert Dr. Helena Morris explains, the palace is not a monolith. There are competing interests and agendas. The way this confrontation unfolded suggests a level of orchestration aimed at managing both internal dissent and external perceptions. The implications of a possible setup extend beyond personal grievances to the very future of the monarchy. If the palace is seen as manipulating family conflicts for institutional gain, it risks eroding public trust and fueling calls for reform or abolition. Conversely, allowing unchecked criticism from within could undermine royal authority and stability. In the wake of the controversy, some royal insiders have called for greater transparency and dialogue to prevent further damage. They emphasize the need for a balance between protecting the monarchy's traditions and addressing the evolving needs and voices within the family. For Harry and Meghan, the perception of being set up adds a layer of grievance and justifies their increasing distance from the institution. It reinforces their narrative of being marginalized and misunderstood, fueling their resolve to define their own paths. This theory also resonates with a public increasingly skeptical of elite institutions and sensitive to issues of fairness and accountability. The idea that palace politics might have orchestrated such a painful family rupture captures imaginations and deepens intrigue. Ultimately, whether or not the meeting was a calculated setup, the consequences are real and lasting. The public spectacle of the confrontation has cemented divisions, challenged loyalties, and highlighted the complexities of managing a modern monarchy with centuries-old traditions. As the royal family moves forward, questions about transparency, control, and the balance between personal relationships and public duty will remain at the forefront. The possibility of a setup serves as a reminder that within the palace walls, power plays are as consequential as blood ties. King Charles's decision to exclude Prince Harry from the 30-minute family meeting and deliver a blunt dismissal over financial matters was not made lightly. While on the surface it may appear harsh and emotionally charged, many royal insiders and experts assert that this move was a calculated, strategic effort to reinforce the monarchy's stability and delineate clear boundaries within the family, boundaries that have become increasingly blurred in recent years. To understand why Charles's move was both brutal and calculated, one must consider the immense pressures the monarch faces. Ascending the throne at a time of unprecedented scrutiny, with a rapidly changing social and political landscape, King Charles has been navigating a delicate path between tradition and modernization. His reign is marked by the challenge of preserving an institution steeped in centuries of history while adapting to the expectations of a modern public demanding transparency, relevance, and accountability. In this context, Charles's firm stance against Harry's financial requests and his exclusion from key discussions can be viewed as an attempt to protect the monarchy's core principles. The king aims to clarify that royal privileges are contingent on fulfilling official duties and that personal choices, such as stepping back from royal life, carry real consequences. This message is essential not only for Harry but for other members of the family and the broader public. Royal analyst Jonathan Fitzroy explains, Charles understands that the monarchy's survival depends on projecting unity and discipline. By making an example of Harry's overreach, the king is asserting his authority and reaffirming the rules that govern royal privilege. Moreover, Charles's decision reflects a broader institutional strategy. The monarchy has long operated through an unspoken contract. In exchange for public support and financial backing, royals are expected to dedicate themselves to official roles and uphold the family's image. Harry and Meghan's departure, coupled with their outspoken criticisms, threatened to unravel this contract. By excluding Harry from the strategy meeting, a gathering critical for discussing the monarchy's future, the king effectively signaled that Harry no longer has a seat at the table unless he recommits to his responsibilities. This exclusion also serves to consolidate decision-making power among loyalists and working royals who maintain the institution's continuity. Some palace insiders suggest that this move was premeditated, part of a broader effort to contain the fallout from Harry and Meghan's exit. The meeting was designed not only to discuss financial arrangements but to send a clear message about who is included in the royal family's inner circle. The brutality of the move lies in its personal impact. Family estrangements are painful in any context, but when amplified by public scrutiny and media speculation, they become deeply wounding. Charles's decision risked alienating his son further and igniting public sympathy for Harry and Meghan. Yet, from a calculated standpoint, the king deemed the risks necessary. The monarchy's public image and institutional integrity were prioritized over personal reconciliation. This calculation underscores the tension between family loyalty and royal duty, a tension that has defined Charles's reign. Historians note that monarchs have often had to make difficult choices that pit personal feelings against the demands of sovereignty. King Charles's actions echo this tradition, reflecting the age-old reality that the crown's interests often supersede individual relationships. Critics argue that this approach is outdated and lacks compassion, potentially damaging the monarchy's popularity among younger and more progressive audiences. They warn that rigid enforcement of boundaries without efforts at healing risks fracturing the institution irreparably. Nevertheless, Charles's supporters contend that his strategy is necessary to ensure the monarchy's longevity. They point to the need for clear lines and disciplined adherence to royal roles as foundations for public trust and support. The king's move also fits within a pattern of assertive decisions aimed at reasserting control after years of turbulence. From restructuring royal finances to redefining roles within the family, Charles has signaled a commitment to modernizing the monarchy while maintaining its core traditions. In private, sources describe Charles as a man burdened by the weight of these decisions, aware of their personal cost but resolute in his duty. His measured but firm handling of Harry's request reflects this complex balance. As the family navigates the fallout, questions remain about the possibility of reconciliation. The king's strategy, while clear and decisive, leaves little room for compromise, setting a high bar for any future rapprochement. For Prince Harry, the experience has underscored the consequences of his choices, reinforcing his estrangement but also fueling his determination to forge a path independent of the institution. The king's calculated brutality in this instance serves as a defining moment in the ongoing evolution of the British monarchy. A moment where the demands of tradition, public expectation, and personal loyalty collide with profound consequences. Meghan Markle's reaction to Prince Harry's abrupt dismissal and exclusion from the critical royal family meeting was swift and profound, echoing far beyond the quiet confines of Montecito, California, where the couple has been building their new life. Those close to the Duchess describe her response as a mixture of deep frustration, protective fury, and a steely resolve to stand by her husband amid what she perceives as ongoing marginalization by the royal establishment. From the moment Harry conveyed the details of his confrontation with King Charles, Meghan reportedly mobilized her closest advisors and supporters to strategize the couple's next moves. Known for her sharp intellect and unwavering loyalty, Meghan viewed the king's cold dismissal not merely as a personal slight, but as part of a broader pattern of exclusion and hostility aimed at her family. Meghan sees this as yet another chapter in a long saga of systemic challenges and resistance from within the palace walls, a source familiar with the Duchess's inner circle revealed. She's determined to protect Harry and their children from further harm while ensuring their story is told on their terms. In the weeks following the incident, Meghan's public appearances and statements subtly reflected this resolve. Though maintaining a dignified silence on family matters publicly, she engaged in various philanthropic initiatives and media projects that emphasize themes of resilience, empowerment, and advocacy. Messages widely interpreted as indirect responses to the royal family's treatment of her and Harry. The fallout from the exclusion also intensified discussions around the couple's financial independence. With official royal support curtailed and security funding a contentious issue, Meghan and Harry have increasingly relied on their ventures and partnerships to sustain their lifestyle and safeguard their family. This financial autonomy has been both a source of empowerment and a point of tension with the palace. Insiders report that Meghan has taken an active role in managing their brand and public image, seeking to counteract negative narratives and assert control over their story. Her background in media and advocacy has equipped her with tools to navigate the complex interplay of public perception and personal privacy. The Montecito estate, once a sanctuary, has become a hub of strategic planning and media engagement for the couple. Meghan's influence extends beyond mere support. She is described as a driving force behind their decisions and a fierce guardian against perceived injustices. Sources close to the family say Meghan's frustration is compounded by what she views as a lack of genuine reconciliation efforts from the royal side. While public statements emphasize respect for privacy, Meghan perceives a disconnect between words and actions, interpreting the exclusion and dismissal as symbolic of deeper family divisions. This sense of alienation has, according to some, pardon Meghan's stance. Rather than seeking rapprochement at any cost, she is said to advocate for a principled approach that demands acknowledgement of past wrongs and respect for their new boundaries. Meghan's reaction has also sparked dialogue about the role of modern royal spouses and the challenges they face navigating centuries-old institutions. Her experience highlights the tensions between tradition and individuality, duty and personal freedom, and public expectation versus private realities. The media spotlight on Meghan intensified as reports of the meeting and exclusion spread, with tabloids and commentators dissecting her influence on Harry and the couple's decisions. Supporters argue that such scrutiny is unfair and rooted in bias, while critics portray her as a divisive figure driving a wedge in the family. Despite the controversy, Meghan has maintained a focus on her charitable work and advocacy, using her platform to champion causes related to mental health, women's rights, and social justice. This approach serves both to reinforce her public identity and to counterbalance negative portrayals. The Montecito fallout has also affected the couple's relationship with other members of the royal family. Sources indicate that while some relatives express sympathy, others remain wary or distant, reflecting the broader fractures within the institution. Looking forward, Meghan's role in the unfolding royal saga remains pivotal. Her responses to challenges, her public engagement, and her influence on Harry's decisions will continue to shape perceptions and impact the family's dynamics. As the monarchy grapples with these internal conflicts in the public eye, Meghan stands as both a catalyst for change and a lightning rod for controversy, a figure whose presence has redefined traditional notions of royal family life. As the dust settles from the explosive fallout between Prince Harry and King Charles, the pressing question on everyone's mind is, what happens next? With the royal family's future hanging in the balance and the personal rift between father and son widening, experts, insiders, and royal watchers have weighed in with predictions, analyses, and cautious hopes for what lies ahead. First and foremost, many agree that the immediate focus will be on damage control and managing public perception. The monarchy, keenly aware of its fragile standing, will likely seek to project an image of unity and resilience despite the fractures revealed behind closed doors. This may involve carefully crafted public appearances, statements emphasizing family solidarity, and strategic communication efforts to steer the narrative toward stability.